The night Ava Delgado gave birth, the sky didn't cry, she did. And she didn't just cry for the pain. She cried because the man she loved, the man she believed in, walked away when she needed him most. But what no one knew, what not even she knew then, was that her tears weren't the end. They were the beginning of something unstoppable. Asterisk. The rain tapped steadily against the windows of the small apartment Ava Delgado had called home for the past 8 months. The heater rattled in the corner, barely warming the air. She stood by the window, one hand on her swollen belly, the other holding a note she had read 100 times already, Jason's handwriting, brief and final. I can't do this. I'm sorry. 9 months of memories shattered in one line. The silence in the apartment was thick, except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan from the old pipes in the wall. She closed her eyes as another contraction began to build, sharp, aching, steady. It wasn't time yet, but it was close. She had imagined this moment differently. There was supposed to be laughter, a packed hospital bag by the door, Jason pacing nervously with a camera, her hand in his. Instead, she was alone, barefoot and terrified, but not broken. Her phone lit up on the table. It was her grandmother. Carmen, estoy en camino. The text read, I'm on my way. Ava took a breath and held her belly as another wave of pain passed. The baby shifted, as if sensing the storm that had begun outside and within her. But through the discomfort, a strange calm settled over her. This was not how her story was supposed to go, but maybe this was how it needed to begin. She thought back to the day she met Jason at the university library, the way he had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. She remembered late-night talks, whispered promises, plans for the future, a shared dream of building something together. That dream had vanished the moment Ava told him she was pregnant. He hadn't yelled, he hadn't argued, he had simply left. The next day, he stopped answering calls. He stopped being part of her world. And now, here she was, 1 week from her due date, packing a small hospital bag by herself, folding baby clothes into a second-hand suitcase while her hands trembled from the weight of everything he left behind. Carmen arrived. Just after midnight, the woman's silver hair was pulled back into a bun, and her eyes were sharp with concern. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. She simply wrapped Ava in her arms and whispered, You're stronger than you think. The next morning, Ava's water broke. The hospital was small and a little worn, but clean. The nurses were kind. Carmen held her hand every step of the way, whispering prayers and stories of Ava's own mother, how she had once labored for 18 hours without a complaint. Ava didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted. She felt overwhelmed. But she didn't feel abandoned anymore, because something had awakened inside her, a quiet fire. And when the baby finally arrived, with a soft cry and tiny fingers curling toward the light, Ava knew her life had changed forever. She named him Mateo. She held him close, his tiny heartbeat thumping against hers, and whispered, I don't need anyone else. You're enough, and I promise I'll be enough for you. That night, once the room quieted and Carmen dozed beside the bassinet, Ava picked up her phone. She opened the front camera and hit record. Hi, Mateo, she said softly, her eyes swollen from tears but her voice steady. It's just us tonight. I wanted to tell you something before the world tells you who you're supposed to be. You're not a mistake. You're not a burden. You are the beginning of everything good in my life, and I will never leave you. She paused, brushing her fingers over her hospital bracelet, then continued, I don't know how this story ends. I don't have money. I don't have a plan, but I have you, and that means I'll figure it out. The camera caught her vulnerability, her fear, her love unfiltered, raw, honest. And in that moment, she made herself a promise she didn't yet know would change everything. One day, the world would know her name, not because of who left her, but because of what she built from that pain. She didn't know it then, but that promise was the beginning of a legacy. A legacy that even Jason Cole, 7 years later, would not be able to ignore. And when their paths crossed again, he wouldn't find the woman he abandoned. He would find someone unrecognizable, someone powerful, someone unforgettable. This time, it would be him who couldn't walk away, and Ava, she would have a choice, but not because she needed him. 7 years passed like seasons, quiet, slow but full of change. Ava Delgado no longer lived in that tiny apartment with the broken heater and drafty windows. Now, she worked from a home office where her son's laughter echoed through the hallway. The walls held framed drawings, not awards. The fridge was covered in crayon-colored sticky notes, not meal prep schedules. But this wasn't the life she settled for, it was the one she created. After Matteo was born, Ava had poured herself into survival, and then into purpose. She took night classes while working day shifts at a local diner. She learned how to code when most people her age were still figuring out what they wanted. She took on freelance gigs, teaching herself how to design apps that helped mums find childcare, single parents find job listings, and local communities connect with resources. Her ideas weren't just smart, they were personal. By the time Matteo started kindergarten, Ava had launched her own startup, Rising Root. She didn't have investors. She didn't have media coverage, but she had something most startups didn't: a story that mattered. The app quietly grew in popularity, first in local networks, then citywide. One news article turned into 5. A podcast interview led to a small grant. That grant led to an invitation to speak at a Women in Tech Summit in downtown Los Angeles, and that's where it happened. Ava was backstage, adjusting her blazer, brushing invisible dust from her pants. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from the surreal weight of where she had come from. Just before walking on stage, she glanced at her phone. There was a video from Matteo, now 7, with dimples as deep as the first day. He smiled. "You got this, Mom," he said, holding up a homemade sign that said "Best Mom CEO" in glitter and blue marker. "Make M believe." She smiled through tears, kissed the phone screen, and stepped into the spotlight. The auditorium went still. She didn't start with business statistics or market analysis. She started with a memory. 7 years ago, she said, I gave birth. In a hospital room, without a partner, without a job, without any real plan. All I had was a baby boy, and the decision to rise. The room held its breath. She spoke not just of innovation, but of resilience. Not just of data, but of dignity. Her voice didn't tremble, it soared. The applause was real, long earned. After the event, people gathered around her, journalists, tech leaders, mentors, and one face she hadn't seen in 7 years. Jason Cole. His hair was neater now, his suit cost more, but his eyes, those hadn't changed. Still sharp, still unreadable, still carrying the same silence that had walked out the door the night she needed him most. "Ava," he said, stunned. "That was unbelievable." She blinked slowly. "Thank you. I didn't know you were." She cut him off gently. "Doing something worth your attention." He looked down. "No, I just didn't know how much I missed." She nodded, her voice even. "You missed everything." He didn't know what to say, so she turned to leave, her team waiting behind her. But then he said something unexpected. "Can I meet him?" A pause. She turned back, tilting her head. "Now you want to know him?" Jason hesitated. "I'm not asking for anything. I want to see him. To know who he is." Ava studied him for a long moment. She didn't feel anger. Not anymore. What she felt now was clarity. Peace. "I'll think about it," she said, then walked away. Later that night, as she and Matteo ate ice cream on the living room floor, he asked, "Mom, who was that man talking to you at the event?" She looked at him carefully. "That was someone from my past," she said. "But you, Matteo, you're my future." He nodded, then licked his spoon. "Okay, want to play cards after this?" She smiled. Always. In her heart, she knew this wasn't over. Jason had seen something on that stage, a glimpse of the life he left behind. But he didn't just see a successful woman. He saw what he had walked away from, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he could live with that choice. What he didn't realize yet was this. She didn't need him to apologize. She didn't need him to regret. She had already forgiven him. The moment she learned how to thrive without him. But now, he would have to ask himself the hardest question of all. Could he be part of a story he didn't help write? And if she did let him in again, would it be too late? A knock came at the door. Just as Ava was rinsing dinner dishes. The sun had dipped low, painting the Los Angeles sky in streaks of gold and fire. And Matteo's voice echoed from the living room. He was building a Lego space station, narrating each piece like a mission. "Commander." She dried her hands, stepped toward the door, and paused. Somehow, she already knew. When she opened it, Jason stood there, nervous, uncertain, and not at all the man who once walked away without looking back. He held a small box in his hands, fingers tightening around it, as if afraid she might slam the door. Thought maybe ... if you were willing ... we could talk. Ava didn't invite him in. Not yet. She stepped outside, closing the door softly behind her, keeping her son's world undisturbed. Jason looked down. I didn't expect you to say yes. Haven't said anything yet, she replied. He nodded, shifting uncomfortably. Right. Ava crossed her arms. What do you want, Jason? There was no anger in her voice, no heat, just calm steel, the kind forged over years of doing everything alone. Jason swallowed hard. I want to know my son. The words fell between them, heavy with time. She studied him for a long moment, her silence more powerful than anything she could have said. He opened the box slowly, revealing an old, folded photograph, one she hadn't seen in years. It was them, at 22, standing in front of the university library. She was smiling, full of dreams. He was holding her hand. I kept this, he said, even when I didn't keep anything else. Ava took a deep breath. Why now? Jason hesitated. Because I finally became the man I was supposed to be, years too late. And because when I saw you on that stage, Ava, I realized I didn't just lose a child, I lost you. And I'm not asking for a second chance at us. But maybe I could have a first chance with him. Ava's chest tightened. She wasn't prepared for how much that would sting. Not because she believed him, but because part of her had waited 7 years for something like this. Some gesture, some regret, some explanation. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like healing. It felt like history knocking on a door she had already locked. I'll think about it, she said again. But this isn't about you, Jason. It's about Matteo. If I even consider letting you into his life, it'll be on my terms. One step at a time. I understand. I don't think you do, she said softly. But maybe one day, you will. She turned to go. Wait, Jason said, reaching into his jacket. There's one more thing. He handed her a white envelope, plain, unmarked. I've set up a trust fund for him. It's not about me trying to buy anything. It's just, he's my son, even if I didn't act like a father. I want to make sure he has what he needs, whether or not I'm in his life. Ava took it carefully, unsure what to say. Later that night, long after Jason had gone and Matteo was asleep with a Lego astronaut in his hand, Ava opened the envelope. Inside was a simple note and legal documents. The note read, "For everything I should have done then and everything I still hope I can do now." She stared at it for a long time. That night, she didn't sleep much. She sat by Matteo's bedside, watching his chest rise and fall, brushing back his curls, whispering the same quiet promise she had made in the hospital 7 years ago. No matter what, he would always come first. In the days that followed, Jason didn't push, he didn't call, he didn't send flowers or apologies. He waited, and Ava, she started asking herself a question she never thought she would face. Could someone really change? Could a man who abandoned you in your most vulnerable moment become someone you trust with the most precious thing in your life? She wasn't sure, but the world was watching now. Investors, media outlets, schools wanting to partner with Rising Root. Ava had become a name respected, admired, sometimes envied, but none of them knew the truth behind it. That the woman they applauded had been built from heartbreak. That her strength was not born from inspiration, but from necessity. And now, the man who had unknowingly shaped her greatest pain was standing at the edge of her new life, asking not for love, but for access to the one thing she had never shared. Would she open that door? Could forgiveness really stretch that far? Or would this story, like so many others, remind the world that some wounds don't close, they simply learn how to stop bleeding? Asterisk. The invitation came in a sleek white envelope, with gold trim, nestled between business mail and a package of science kits Matteo had begged for. Ava nearly tossed it aside, assuming it was another pitch from a luxury brand wanting to sponsor her startup's inspirational image. But then she saw the sender. The Harlow Foundation annual gala. Ava's hand paused midair. She hadn't heard that name in years, not since her college days, when Jason's family had thrown dazzling charity events like they were royal banquets. This gala, it wasn't just an event. It was a showcase of power. The wealthiest families, tech moguls, global figures, all gathering under chandeliers to toast legacies they inherited. And apparently, this year, they were inviting her. There was a handwritten note clipped to the invite. "You've inspired more than just the world, Ava. I would be honored if you spoke at the gala. The entire board supports it. Eleanor Harlow, Jason's mother, a woman who had once smiled politely at Ava across long marble tables, never truly acknowledging her. A woman who, as far as Ava remembered, had never asked how she was doing after Jason left, never called, never wrote. And now this. Mateo was flipping through his activity book nearby. "Mom, what's that?" he asked, licking a popsicle. Ava folded the card quickly. "Just a fancy event. I'm not sure if I'll go. Will there be cake?" He grinned. She laughed despite herself. Probably. The days that followed were a storm of emotion. She debated throwing the invite away, but something deep inside whispered, "Don't ignore this. Not for revenge, not even for pride, but because, maybe, the world needed to see what a woman could become when she wasn't rescued, but rebuilt herself." So she said yes. The night of the gala, Ava walked into the ballroom not as the girl who had once waited for Jason to show up on cold porches with apologies, but as the woman who had grown roots in the very soil he abandoned her in. She wore deep navy, the color of midnight confidence, with a single pearl pendant, her mother's. Her natural curls framed her face like a crown. Whispers followed her entrance. "Is that her? She's the Rising Root founder. Didn't she date Jason Cole back in the day? Is that his son?" Mateo, dressed in a tiny tuxedo, held her hand tightly. He looked around wide-eyed but calm, the way only a child raised in love could be. Jason was across the room, standing near his mother. He hadn't seen them yet. Eleanor approached first, more graceful than Ava remembered. Her expression was surprisingly soft. "You look stunning," she said. "And you've done more in 7 years than most do in 70. Ava didn't know how to respond. Eleanor glanced at Mateo and smiled genuinely. "He looks like you, but the eyes, those are unmistakably Cole." Mateo tilted his head. "Are you a queen or something?" The older woman laughed, caught off guard. "No, young man, but I wish I was." Jason approached then, stopping a few feet away, uncertain again. "Hi," he said quietly. "You came." "I wasn't sure I would," Ava replied, "but my son wanted cake." Mateo tugged her sleeve. "You said there'd be cake, Mom." Jason smiled slightly. "There's a whole table of it near the stage. Want to come with me?" Mateo asked. Jason looked at Ava, unsure. She nodded once. Mateo reached for Jason's hand, and Jason took it. They walked away slowly. A man and a boy who shared blood, but not yet history. And for the first time, Ava didn't feel anxious. She felt powerful. The speech came after dinner. Ava stood beneath glowing lights, speaking into a microphone while hundreds watched. But her words weren't rehearsed. They came from the heart. "I'm not here tonight to tell you about my company, or how I turned a startup into a social force. I'm here because I believe every story, especially the hidden ones, deserve a place in the light." She paused, locking eyes with Jason across the room. 7 years ago, I became a mother in a hospital room filled only with silence and strength. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a plan. I had love, and I had fire. She looked out over the sea of glittering gowns and tailored suits. "Sometimes, what breaks us also wakes us. I thought I lost everything when I was left behind, but what I found was far more powerful than what I lost. I found my voice, I found my son, and through him, I found myself." The applause was thunderous, but the only sound Ava truly heard was Mateo's shout from the back. "That's my mom." She smiled through tears. After the event, Jason walked up slowly, Mateo still holding his hand. "That was the most honest thing I've ever heard in this room," he said. "I didn't say it for you," Ava replied, "but I meant every word." Jason nodded. "He likes me. He asked if I'll play soccer with him next weekend." "And what did you say?" "I told him I'd go, no matter what." Ava studied him, eyes narrowing slightly. "If you're going to be in his life, Jason, it can't be convenient. It has to be consistent. He doesn't get broken promises. Not from anyone." "I understand. I hope you do," she said, because the truth was, she wasn't guarding her heart anymore. She was guarding her son's, and that was a responsibility she would never hand over lightly. The first real test didn't come with a grand gesture. It came on a rainy Saturday morning, when the soccer field was more puddles than grass, and most parents were calling in to cancel. Ava sat in her car, parked near the entrance, watching the windshield wipers dance in slow, steady sweeps. Mateo was in the back seat, dressed in his blue jersey and oversized cleats, bouncing with a kind of energy that couldn't be contained by weather or nerves. "He's really coming, right?" Mateo asked, glancing toward the field. already scanning for Jason's car. Ava hesitated. He said he would. Jason had been showing up, calling to check in, attending school functions, dropping off books and kits Mateo adored. But today felt different. There would be no crowd, no public eye watching, no curated moments, just weather and choice. 10 minutes passed. Ava checked her phone. No message, no call. Then, just as she was about to open her door and break the news gently, a familiar black SUV pulled into the lot, parking right next to hers. Jason stepped out in sweats and a cap, holding a thermos in one hand, an umbrella in the other. Mateo squealed with delight. "He's here. He came, Mum." Ava closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. Jason popped open the umbrella and ran to Mateo's side of the car, shielding him from the rain as he opened the door. "Let's go, champ. Rain's just sky sweat." He grinned. Ava watched them jog off, her son laughing the entire way. She followed behind slowly, heart beating in a rhythm that was both cautious and reluctantly hopeful. The game was messy, loud, chaotic, glorious. Mateo scored twice, fell once, and ended the match soaked to the bone, but beaming with pride. Jason stayed the whole time, cheering louder than anyone else, snapping pictures, high-fiving other kids like he belonged there. Afterward, while they all sipped hot cocoa in the park shelter, Ava noticed the way Mateo leaned into Jason's side, the way Jason ruffled his hair without thinking. It wasn't forced, it wasn't for show. It looked real. Still, Ava had questions, not for Jason, for herself. Could healing really come this quietly, not with fireworks, but with soccer cleats and soggy socks? Could redemption be built one muddy afternoon at a time? Weeks passed, and then months. Jason kept showing up early mornings, late evenings, weekends. He didn't miss school plays or dentist appointments. He even volunteered at Rising Roots youth program, offering marketing mentorships to teens from under-sized neighborhoods. He was rebuilding something, not with promises, with presence. One evening, Ava walked into her office after hours to find Jason sitting on the floor with a group of high schoolers, laughing as they debated whether dreams mattered more than discipline. He wasn't lecturing them, he was listening. After they left, he stood up and looked at her. "You didn't have to let me in," he said. "I know that." Ava nodded. "But you're here, that counts." He stepped closer. "Ava. I know, I said I'm not asking for a second chance with you, but lately ... I find myself wondering, not because I want to rewrite the past, but because every version of the future I imagine now you're in it." She blinked, surprised. "Don't say that unless you're ready for what it means." "I'm not sure I ever will be," Jason admitted, "but I want to try. This time, I won't run. Not from you, not from him, not from who I could have been." Silence filled the room. Then Ava said something he didn't expect. "People ask me all the time, how did I do it? How did I raise a child, build a company, and survive what could have broken me?" Jason looked at her, waiting. She stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. "The truth is, I didn't survive in spite of being left behind. I survived because of it. Pain showed me who I was, and Mateo, he reminded me who I wanted to become." Jason swallowed, emotion tightening his face. "And maybe," she continued, "that's why you're here now. Not just to make amends, but to witness what love built in your absence." Outside, the city buzzed with its usual urgency, but inside that office, time slowed. Not everything was forgiven, not everything forgotten, but the door, long shut, wasn't locked anymore. It stood open just enough to see what might come next. Asterisk. The past always has a way of catching up, but sometimes it doesn't come to break you. Sometimes it comes to ask if you're ready to write a different ending. It had been almost a year since Jason first walked back into their lives, and in that time, Ava had learned how quiet, consistent effort could soften even the deepest scars. But she also knew a return was not the same as a repair. What was broken could never go back to what it was. It could only become something new if they were both brave enough to build it. One morning, as sunlight spilled into her kitchen, Mateo sat at the table drawing a superhero with two parents. "His name's Brightbolt," he explained. "He's got a lightning heart, an unbreakable hope." Ava smiled. "Unbreakable hope? Huh, sounds powerful." "Yeah," Mateo said seriously, "but only when his team stays together." That afternoon, Jason showed up with a small envelope. "Don't worry," he said quickly. "It's not another gala invite." He handed it to her, eyes nervous. Inside was a hand-drawn sketch of a community center. In the margin, Project Leo. "I've been talking with your board," Jason said, "and some friends in the foundation world. I want to build something that matters with both of you." Ava stared at the paper, her hands trembling just slightly. "A place where single parents can access support, childcare, job training, even therapy," Jason continued. "I want it named after the kid who changed everything, Mateo." Ava didn't say anything for a long moment, because what do you say when the man who once left you in your most vulnerable hour now wants to create sanctuary for others who face that same loneliness? You don't speak, you feel, and you listen for the truth in your bones. The launch came. 6 months later, Project Leo opened in a sunlit, renovated library space just a few blocks from where Ava had once worked 2 jobs to afford daycare. And this time, Jason wasn't standing in the shadows. He was in the crowd. Yes, but more than that, he was in the foundation, helping with logistics, hosting Saturday story time, planning summer field trips. But it wasn't about grand gestures anymore. It was about Mateo seeing his dad show up, again and again. One evening, after tucking Mateo into bed, Ava stepped onto the balcony with Jason. The city hummed in the distance, and the stars blinked with quiet promise. Jason exhaled. "I keep wondering what would have happened if I stayed back then." Ava looked at him, her voice calm. "I used to ask myself that too. Every day." He nodded. "And now I know it doesn't matter," she said softly. "Because if you hadn't left, I wouldn't have discovered just how strong I could become. And you wouldn't have had the chance to choose something different. Not for me, for yourself." Jason's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I'm not asking for your love," he whispered. "But if it ever returns, I'll be here. Not to hold it, but to honor it." Ava reached out, taking his hand briefly, not as a promise, but as a recognition. "You're not the same man you were," she said. "And I'm not the same woman." He smiled. "Good. I like the woman you've become." Ava nodded. "So, do one." That night, as the city faded into the hush of midnight, Ava realized something. The most powerful stories don't end with revenge or regret. They end with growth, with healing, with the quiet triumph of becoming whole on your own, and still having the strength to open your heart again, not because you need to, but because you choose to. Mateo's laughter echoed from his room, his voice calling out into the night. "Mom, can we read the superhero story again?" Ava smiled and turned to go. Double quotes. "Yes, baby, Brightbolt's story isn't over yet." And neither was hers.